Following podcast includes very mild swearing and very mild spoilers for CW's Arrow and The Flash. Hello and welcome to the Super Scioli Bros podcast. I'm Dominic Scioli.
I'm Jack Scioli.
And this week we're going to be talking about 3 superhero TV shows, Gotham, Flash, and Arrow. We're going to start with Gotham. Jack, you don't watch Gotham, but I do. I've been inflicting it upon myself. And I wrote a little review for it for the Phoenix for this week's issue. And for that review, I tried to divorce myself from like the comic book fan in me. So like I tried to just look at it as a TV show. And because I knew we were going to do this podcast, and this is where I'm going to talk about the comic book side of it. And just to briefly touch upon that review, the show isn't necessarily all that bad. Like, the acting is pretty good, and, well, that's pretty much it. The acting is good, but the writing is freaking terrible. Like, characters get such shitty lines. They throw characters under the bus, and the plots don't really make sense. Like this episode this week, it was about like political assassinations because of some like redistricting plan, but they never really established who hired the assassin, because the assassin was killing city council members who were voting for these 2 plans. One of them was backed by the Falcone family, one of them was backed by the Maroni family. But he was assassinating people on both sides.
Oh.
And like, so I think what Joaquin came over, Joaquin Carrig, one of the 2 sports editors for the Phoenix, he came over and we watched it together. And what he thinks it must have been is that Fish Mooney, the mid-level mobster who Jada Pinkett Smith plays, she's kind of trying to like work her way up to becoming one of the big bosses. So he thinks that she hired him to kind of like to whack supporters of both the 2 established mobsters, but it's never explained, and it's never even alluded to. So it's just the writing isn't good at setting up plots. Or at least explaining plots.
Yeah, I'm sure that, you're right in terms of it being, not a bad show just on the merits of being just a show, but it doesn't seem like you can really realistically look at it like that, because it relies so heavily on the recognition factor, in terms of like the little references it makes and everything. Like, it's not trying to be just a show that happens to be set in Gotham. It's trying to be a show that plays off of all of our, expectations of what these characters are, So you can't really, I don't think you can just look at it and say, well, as a show, because it doesn't do that, it doesn't present itself that way.
Yeah, the main reason why I tried to write the reviewing just from it like as a show was because I knew if I went through like the comic book stuff in me, that article would have been like 3,000 words long. But so the first thing that I want to talk about with it being like a comic book show and the problems with that is that it misinterprets characters or changes interpretations of them to ways that like it doesn't fit. Like, the biggest problem I have, and I've talked to you about it, is Renee Montoya. In the comics, she's an awesome character. She is, like, the main, disciple of James Gordon cleaning up the GCPD. And, like, so she, maybe not idolizes him, but she looks up to him. Like most of the cops in the major case unit. But in this show, she and Crispus Allen, another disciple of Gordon's, they already work in the MCU. like before Gordon even shows up, and they both are convinced that he's a dirty cop. and that is like, it's like as far away from the actual character as you can get.
I think this is another symptomatic example of how it all can just be traced back to them failing at that with their initial premise, you know, because they didn't make Gotham Central, but they pulled elements from it, but then they made, you know, they wanted to make this young Gordon show and show how he kind of came up through this seedy underbelly of Gotham and stayed pure, but you can't have both of those, you know, because one is when Gordon is already commissioner and it's all these cops who came up under him and he's kind of this revered character and they're all trying to live up to his legacy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is him young, so you can't have that, which means if you're going to pull those characters in, you, like you said, you excise that element of their character, and then it just reminds you of the show you're not watching.
Yeah, and reminding you in the worst way.
Yeah.
And then another, I told you this on Facebook during this most recent episode, where the writers clearly don't know what a paradox is. And what made that even worse is that the character who they did that through is the Riddler. And in the show, Edward Nygma is like a forensics guy for the GCPD, and they're at a crime scene, and Bullock and Gordon ask him, like, what do you have for us? And he's like, a paradox. And then he explains what it is, and it's not a paradox. A paradox is something that is impossible, but it is. Like, it's something that logically can't exist, but it exists, kind of, you know? And all it was that a city councilman who backed Maroni got murdered, as well as a city councilman who backed Falcone. That's not a paradox. Not at all. And the Riddler is supposed to be like the smartest person that Batman goes against. Like he, you know?
Yeah.
And so having him not know what a paradox is
that's
just
ridiculous.
doesn't make any sense.
I think also, just going back to the way the show's premise is flawed, if they had another way that they could have made this show that wouldn't detract from it so much, is if they wouldn't have all of these soon-to-be villains showing up all the time, you know? Because to have that cake and eat it too, they have 8-year-old Bruce Wayne in the same show that they have, what?
12.
Oh, sorry, 12-year-old Bruce Wayne in the same show that they have, like, 22, 24-year-old Riddler.
Yeah.
You know, so when Batman does show up in his, you know, late 20s, say, call it 15 years from now, Riddler's gonna be 40.
Yeah. And, like, the only character who I'm okay with that is Penguin.
Yeah.
Because, and luckily, Penguin, played by Robin Lloyd Taylor, is far and away the best thing about this show. He's awesome. I get giddy whenever he's on the screen. But, like, Penguin being older than Batman makes sense. Because, like, he's visibly older in the comics. But, like, Riddler being 15 years older than him is insane. And he hasn't shown up yet, but Harvey Dent being 10 to 12 years older than Batman makes no sense.
Yeah, we don't, technically we don't know how old he's going to be, because he's played by a dude who is one of those babyface actors who you could arguably sell as a high school student.
I guess.
So it's possible that he could end up being just like 5 or 6 years older than Bruce, which would be excusable, but still unpleasant.
Yeah, I don't know when his first episode is going to be, but I'm looking at that episode with my eyebrows raised so high that they're pretty much not even on my face anymore. Like, because I don't even get how they could because if he is, say, a high school student, like a high school senior or something, how are they gonna wrap him up into this show? Like, in what context is he gonna show up?
I don't know. They could give him the same kind of nonsensical inclusion that Poison Ivy had.
True, I guess. Ugh. She's another example of this show having no idea what it wants to do. Like,
Yeah, and that's it. To me, it reads like it knows what it wants to do, but what it wants to do is three distinct shows. You know, like they want to have this like young villains show, and they want to have this young Gordon show, and then they want to have Gotham Central, which is the show they should have made. Of the three, that's the one that would be good.
yeah, and there's no real reason why they couldn't have made it. Like, because the easiest example for why they made this Gotham show is that they wanted to have a Batman show, but they didn't want to have Batman in it. But you don't need Batman in Gotham Central, because Batman doesn't show up much in Gotham Central.
Yeah, he's like in the background all the time. And the thing that I've noticed is that it seems like the creator of the show, like the main producer guy,
Mm-hmm.
he's just really into something that I think is really stupid. But he's really into the idea of these characters before they became what they were, you know? And really the only time that this show has presented, from what you've described to me, anything remotely interesting about that premise, it's just Penguin.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds from, you know, your descriptions, and then I read the recaps on Comics Alliance, which I would recommend. I think they're really interesting. But from both of those sources, it seems like Penguin's journey through the show has been really interesting so far.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
But then, you know, while you have one bright spot of the premise there, you have everyone else basically just being shoehorned. You know, like Riddler is a forensic guy, which, you know, whatever, you can make that spin if you want, but he's basically just the Riddler already. He's just an annoying dude who spouts off riddles all the time, and everyone tells him to shut up.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are you here? You know, you're just here so that the show can point and be like, look, it's the Riddler.
But he's not the Riddler yet. Stay tuned to find out how he becomes the Riddler.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's that thing, we talked about this, I think, while you were up here a week or two ago, that the biggest problem with prequels, like, they can be interesting, but it's that need to shoehorn people into places that they don't belong.
Yeah, which then overcomplicates everything. You know, it's like R2-D2 and C-3PO being in all of the prequels, but then not having any recollection of that. And yeah, you know, they toss in the memory wipe at the end of the third one, but it's like, why? Why are they even there then?
Yeah. And like
it's just fan service junk.
The one that in Gotham that pisses me off the most is with Catwoman.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, what if Catwoman was there when the Waynes got murdered?
Yeah, she sounds like a walking bunch of, like, wink wink cats, get it?
Yeah, and oh my god, the fact that she goes by Cat pisses me off so much. It's like, this show has no idea what subtle means. Because you've got her refusing to go by anything but Cat. You have Poison Ivy's character named Ivy Pepper.
Yeah, they just made her first name actually Ivy.
It's just so stupid.
Yeah, that's one thing that I consistently find frustrating about live action comic book adaptations, is that they always feel this need to, like, over explain characters, like, silly names, you know?
Yeah.
Like, most of the time, it's with stuff like somebody else naming them, you know? Something silly sounding, like the way they handled everything in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. But then in this, they're just like, let's just make it their real names.
Yeah, it's just so stupid. But speaking of uh, kind of stupid ways to name characters. Let's transition over to a show that we actually like, which is Arrow.
Okay.
Um, 2 episodes have aired in season 3, right? Season 3
Yes.
of Arrow, and I mean, Arrow's kind of doing the same stuff it always has done. Like these first 2 episodes haven't been all that great,
No.
but they've been like fun enough. I'm already having trouble with what happened in the. Oh right, the first episode was Vertigo again.
Yeah. The first episode was a ham-fisted. What is my direction in life? Plot thing for Oliver.
Yeah, and like, guys, we've had what 46 episodes. He shouldn't be having this conversation with himself anymore. He's been Green Arrow, or in this show just Arrow, for some stupid reason. He's been that for 2 years. Why does he still need to have this inner conflict about whether to be Arrow full time or if he can, try to have a personal life? It's like that stuff that should be happening in season 1, and it happened in season 1.
It really feels like after these 2 episodes, like if you just watch these 2 episodes and try and extrapolate where they're going with it, it really feels like they're gonna have him quit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think what's really weird about it is that and we'll get to this one later, but the exact same dudes are making The Flash, and that show does the exact opposite. I was really hopeful because The Flash premiered before this season of Arrow did, and when I watched it, I was like, okay, this is coming out the gate real strong, and I was really hoping that kind of shift in tone would, like, kind of seep its way into Arrow a little bit. It has not.
Not even close. Like, Flash is... I mean, it kind of seems like we're just going to end up talking about them both at the same time, which is fine. But
I suppose we should. They are connected pretty tightly.
Yeah, they're the same channel made by the same people, and they're going to have crossover episodes. So, like, Flash is like a light-hearted TV show. There's a lot of jokes in it, but I don't know. Arrow seems much more like a soap opera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Arrow I think embraces much more of the CW nature of the drama side of things. Although I mean, Flash has plenty of it too, with nice guy Barry pining after Iris all the time.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like the piano music scenes, as Wilson calls it on Comics Alliance, I feel like those show up so much more often in Arrow than they have Flash.
Yeah. And I think when they show up in Flash, I actually find them a lot more emotionally effective in Flash. Like that scene with Barry and Joe West in the second one.
The ending scene?
Really well done.
Yeah. And like the scene with him and Iris, and he's moving at super speed so he can like tell her how he feels, but so that she doesn't actually hear it. And that was really good too.
I found that one to be a little bit like a step too far into melodrama, but I was okay with it.
I don't know, I liked it. But like as far as like tone goes, Arrow is just so much more darker, and they've like boxed themselves into a corner with that because they had the first 2 seasons of the show having Ollie pretty much be a serial killer and like tortures himself over if he's actually a hero or not.
Well, that's not even what he's torturing himself over this time. It's whether or not he can be this hero and also be Oliver or something. Like, I don't know, it kind of comes out of nowhere to me anyway, because he's never, like, in the whole first season he was like, Oliver Queen doesn't exist, I'm just the hood, or whatever he was going by in that first season, or it's just the mission, and then in the second season was when he was trying to be better,
Mm-hmm.
And that time, there just wasn't this conflict there. He was just like, yeah, I'm trying to balance things with my mom and my sister and doing this hero thing. Oh, I hate my mom now, and all that stuff. But he wasn't like, I don't know, rejecting either side. And now now he's just whining about, oh, but if I keep doing all this hero stuff, then I don't get to have friends.
Yeah, and I mean, he almost bases the entire decision off the one date that he and Felicity had, which happened, admittedly, that date happened to be bombed because he was the Arrow. But, I mean, it's a pretty small sample size there, Ollie.
Yeah. Yeah, and like going back to the kind of the difference in how the shows handle their melodrama, I think another factor in why Flash feels more successful with that stuff is that I think the actors involved in the scenes are just better. Like that scene between Joe West and Barry, like both of those guys just sell that much better than, say, just off the top of my head, any scene Laurel has ever been in Arrow.
Yeah, like obviously in TV shows, especially CW TV shows, there's going to be a pretty big like romance factor. And it doesn't help that like the two female leads in Arrow, Laurel played by Katie Cassidy and Felicity, who's played by, I don't know, I think her name's Emily something. But both of those two are awful at acting emotionally. Felicity's okay with like the goofy scenes, but like when she has to start crying, it is painful.
I don't know, man. I think she's better with that stuff than Cassidy is.
Oh well, I mean, you and me would be better than Cassidy. That's a very low bar.
Yeah, I mean, I think she has her moments with it. Like I think there are times when she's like that in this most recent episode that I think have worked fine. But then there was that one just cringeworthy conversation she has with Ollie. Like the whole conversation, both of them are terrible. They're terribly written. They're not acted very well, and it's just a horrible scene. And she's not very good in that. You are right.
And like again, it's a small sample size with Flash because there's only been 2 episodes. But I do think that whoever plays Iris is pretty good.
Oh yeah, I think she's good too. I mean, she hasn't really had to do much, honestly, but it's like you said, small sample size. But I think she's really good. I think they have good chemistry. Like I buy into why he's into her and stuff. So I think that's successful. As opposed to Arrow, like going. I don't know. I mean, we probably should put. We've been avoiding spoilers with these shows, so. But like, just them hitching onto the Laurel train 100% is really upsetting when they totally had an out.
Yeah, we can talk spoilers. I'll throw in a spoiler warning at the beginning of the show. But like having Laurel's sister Sarah Lance, she's acted so much better.
She's performed better. She's written better. She's fully formed as Black Canary instead of this just frustrating like journey nonsense we're gonna have to see with Laurel.
Yeah.
Is bad. Like she's not well written. I don't think she's horribly acted. Like maybe she is well written. I don't even know because Katie Cassidy is so bad. It makes everything surrounding her seem worse.
Well, she's not well written because her character is awful. Her character is, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe if she had a competent actress, then we would like the character a bit more. But
yeah, like something about Katie Cassidy, all of her scenes feel like a high school drama student pretending to be these things that she is.
Yeah, like way overacted, but not in a fun way.
No.
Just like someone trying so hard to act, but they can't.
Yeah, and she sounds like just the way she sounds, too. It's her voice and the way she speaks makes her sound like she's 18. And it's really, like, I cannot get over that interrogation scene and the way, like, who was directing that episode? Was none of them like, excuse me, Katie Cassidy, this isn't this isn't mock trial in high school. Okay, like knock that off.
Yeah, like they've been trying to write her as like more assertive and like willing to, I don't know, do what it takes to get the truth or whatever. But instead, it just makes her seem like a bitch. Like,
well, I just don't think Cassidy can sell it, because I think that stuff would work fine if it was anybody else, honestly.
well, I don't know. I mean, her in season 2 blackmailing the district attorney to get her job back.
Oh, I mean, that was just poor writing too. Like,
Yeah.
why would that ever work?
Yeah, I mean that's an example of the character being written poorly, and just being put in a situation that is very stupid.
Yeah, it's very, very dumb. I think she is a. So going back to how the show has just hitched all of their wagons onto this dead weight, she is a massive dead weight on this show, and they had it out with her sister and Sarah, and they just killed her off, and like now they're just gonna have this freaking lead weight dragging everything down, and it already has a couple of those.
Yeah, and I mean it's frustrating because Sarah brought a lot to the table, like in terms of character. That's like not acting or whatever, but like she was already a superhero pretty much. Obviously, she killed people too because everybody kills people in the Arrow show, but like she already knew how to fight. She already knew how to fight well. Like that's the thing with this show. They've built these characters up with so much like fighting experience that when Laurel inevitably becomes Black Canary, her fighting experience will be like through this kickboxing coach that she's gonna have in 2 episodes. But like not Laurel, Sarah and Ollie were trained by like the League of Assassins, so they're like super fighters.
Yeah, they go toe to toe with superpowered monsters and can shoot arrows out of the sky with other arrows and shit, and catch arrows. And she's like, "Well, I went to a boxing class."
Yeah.
Like, what? The show has done twice this like meaningful shot of Katie Cassidy looking at Sarah's leather jacket, her Black Canary jacket, and it's like we get it, show. You set it up so that she would become Black Canary, but you had a better one. Like, you should have recognized you gave yourself a better Black Canary than Katie Cassidy will ever be.
Yeah, and it's not like this show is stubborn where, like, oh, this character's popular, but we have this plan, so we're going to stick to the plan. Because if I remember correctly from what I've read, Felicity was supposed to be like a 5-episode character, but people, like, loved her, so they've kept her around, and she's become, like, a very integral part of the show. And they could have done that with Sarah. Like, as far from what I've read on, like, I'm a geek. I've read like forums for these shows, but people loved Sarah. Like I didn't read very many negative things about her. I've read plenty of negative things on these forums about freaking Laurel, but they decided to stick with. And it's not like if they kept Sarah, they couldn't have used Laurel, because Laurel, like we have alluded to, she's a member of the district attorney's office. They can use that as her part. They could have used that as like her contribution to Team Arrow, like from a legal side, and had Sarah be like the fighting side. But instead, they're gonna try to have Laurel be both, and it's just not gonna work.
No, it's not, because Katie Cassidy is terrible.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to, like, some positives about the show, like the things that keep me into it, because we've done quite a bit of complaining about it, so I'm sure people are wondering why the hell we watch it. But like, it's got some really fun action. I think if you put a bow in literally any context, I'm gonna be interested because I think bows are awesome. So like that scene in the most recent episode where it was Ollie and Roy versus what was his name, Komodo.
Yeah.
That scene was awesome. Like that fight was really cool, and then the dive out the window grapple arrow launch thing he does.
Yeah. Like
was also really awesome.
Archery fights are just so cool. Like I lost my mind when Komodo shot an arrow at Ollie. Ollie caught it, turned, and then fired it back. That was so cool.
That was really awesome, yeah.
And
yeah, like that stuff is where, like anytime Laurel appears on screen, the show tanks. And then it does something like that arrow catch and fire thing that just skyrockets back up into being awesome.
And the action is pretty consistently good. I mean, sometimes it's kind of stupid, like that arrow, like the freaking motorcycle. Yeah.
But yeah, that was dumb. And I think some of the fight scenes could stand to be shot a little more calmly. It definitely subscribes to the shape the cameras so that the viewers think they're involved in the action school of cinematography. But don't do that. Let us just watch it,
And I think that some of that is probably to try to hide what isn't always very good fight choreography. But I mean, it's a CW TV show. I'm willing to give it like a curve the grade or whatever you want to call it.
They don't need to pull off Winter Soldier levels of amazing choreography, Like that from what I can tell, when the camera is still long enough, it looks like the choreography's cool. Like, it looks good. So just let it do its thing,
Mm-hmm. So do you wanna move? I mean, we kind of said we were gonna talk about both at the same time, but we ended up kind of just staying on Arrow.
Yeah, let's continue this upward trajectory and talk about the best of these three.
Flash premiered last week's series premiere, so it's new. So it's had 2 episodes, and I mean, in a podcast that we did, I mean, what now is probably like 2 months ago, when we were like previewing all these new shows, I admitted that Arrow is my favorite TV show, but now it's Flash. It's taken Flash 2 episodes to become my favorite TV show, because it's.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not even a question.
It's like we said earlier. It's just so much more fun. Barry Allen.
It's got a better cast, and it's got a better overall hook in terms of the season mystery kind of thing it's setting up.
Yeah, and another thing is it's not nearly as frustrating. Like Arrow.
Oh no.
Arrow had took 2 seasons to call the main character even just Arrow. And it's taken 2 episodes for him to go by Flash, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean he hasn't officially yet, but they're not they are kind of dipping a little bit into the Smallville tank to pull out the red blur or the red streak. But they Wells calls in Flash. They've shown Flash, on that newspaper thing from the first episode. So we know what's coming, he's not going to be called something else because Flash sounds silly. They're not going to do that. And the show has already alluded to the fact that it's going to have Gorilla Grodd, which is a talking gorilla. A super genius talking gorilla mad scientist is going to be on this show.
And even just sticking on the name for a second, we kind of already know that Barry kind of thinks of himself as the Flash because in the narration in the first episode, he mentions that my friend gave me a new name and I have a feeling it's gonna stick, and the name is based off a line where Ollie says saving people in a flash.
Right.
So I think that it'll be. I don't think it's going to take very long for him to start going by the Flash.
Oh no, definitely not. And I'm really looking forward to that moment because usually I find how these superhero shows tend to hold back on revealing the hero to the public. I find that really frustrating a lot of the time. just let it happen already. Stop trying to build this up so that, you know, we can get things like, you know, scenes in Arrow where he just meets and they have a conversation, you know? And I think this show is holding back from that, but I think it's going to be a lot more successful. You know, like, it feels like it's building to a big moment where he's going to be revealed, you know?
Yeah. Because he's already been, like, seen in newspapers and stuff, and in a much different context than Ollie
Yes.
first showed up in newspapers in the first, mostly just that one TV channel. But, like, in the first season of Arrow, he's killing people, and that's the context that he gets brought up in these newscasts as, like, a vigilante who's killing people. But in Flash, he's showing up on newspapers and, like, social media feeds as a red streak who's saving people.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about this show, is that in addition to him going up against, you know, so far the villain of the week stuff, who they've tied all of it to Star Labs, you know, and he's tied to Star Labs, so like every week it seems he's going to have a plot that's like Star Labs versus Star Labs, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And but they have these moments of him just going out there and doing regular superhero street level stuff. Like, he saves that dude, that, like, bicycle messenger at the end of the pilot, and he saves people from the classic superhero scenario of random fire.
Yeah.
That the fire department is somehow unable to stop, and it's burning an entire apartment down. Like, he rushes in, and the one thing I could have wanted from that part that they didn't do is all he does is pull people out real fast. And I was really, really hoping we were going to get to see some tornado arms, or like him run around the building real fast and suffocate the fire or something.
That might have been expecting too much for the second episode.
Yeah.
But it would be nice if we see something like that
like,
soon.
Stuff that I'm not worried we're not going to get to see. You know, like, I feel like we're going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, like, they've kind of leaned into the, like, silly science stuff, because the first episode has him running against a tornado to stop it.
That first episode is Flash versus a tornado. Like, that is amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it took Arrow almost 2 whole seasons to introduce trick arrows, but like you said, I really don't doubt that Flash is gonna use the tornado arms at some point. Hell, he might do it next week, because next week he's facing, like, a gas villain.
Yeah, that's right. I'm also really excited. The first moment he vibrates his molecules to move through solid objects, I'm going to lose my mind.
Isn't that more of a Wally thing, though?
No, I mean, I think that was first introduced with Wally in the comics, but it's just become a Flash thing. It's just Flash. Like, I think even in at least in the Mark Waid Wally West comics I've been reading, they introduce it as something that Barry taught Wally.
Oh, okay. Do you have it, before I talk about my complaints with Flash, do you have any that you want to mention?
I mean, it is on the CW, so it has some of that melodrama stuff. Like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the moving real fast to whine about how Iris doesn't love him thing. I'm not super into that. And I think some of the pining over her gets a little ham-fisted. But one thing that is like a future complaint that hasn't actually happened yet, but it seems like guaranteed that they're setting it up, is that it feels like the conflict between Flash and Reverse Flash is going to be motivated very heavily by Iris, which I think is lame. Like, it's tropey. It reduces her as just an object between two men, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because basically, spoilers for people who don't know, Reverse Flash in the comics is a guy from the future named Eobard Thawne, and this show's interpretation is there's a cop named Eddie Thawne who is almost 100% going to be Reverse Flash. And the thing that I think really sucks about the notion that the motivation is going to be Iris related is that they already have in place this really interesting villain motivation for him that has nothing to do with Iris, which is he's kind of a glory hound. Like he loves watching himself on the news, talking to reporters. He like about being in the spotlight, and eventually Flash is going to take that over for him, because he's just a regular Joe Schmo cop, and Flash is a superhero. So that would be an awesome motivation of like, you stole my thunder kind of thing,
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I like about one thing that I like about that future conflict is that, like, at least so far, Eddie's actually like a pretty cool guy, and so it's gonna set up like him becoming evil. I think it's gonna be like a lot more impactful because right now there's, I mean, no reason to dislike him really. I mean, he's kind of a glory hound and he's dating Iris, but he isn't like in Barry's face about that. He's like, "Thanks for being so cool about this, Barry."
Yeah, he's totally broy with him. And what I like about it is that the guy they cast, even though he's very nice, and you're right, like he's not a jerk at all about any of the stuff. He seems really sinister. Like whenever he's smiling, it seems like he's thinking about how he could murder you.
Oh yeah, I mean he looks totally evil. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, the fact that Iris is going to be like a central motivating factor is pretty disappointing.
At least it seems that way. Like, it really, really seems that way. And I would be surprised if the show didn't go that route, but there's still time for them not to.
Yeah. And so moving to my biggest complaint is it's the same complaint I think that we have with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Through 2 episodes, both of the villains have died.
Yes.
And it's disappointing because, I mean, one of them, Weather Wizard, is like a main member of Rogue's, of the Flash's Rogues.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I think might be a possible out for them with that one is that in the comics I've read somewhere, there are brothers. Like, he has a brother, that they each take up the Weather Wizard mantle at some point.
I guess he did have a brother in that plane crash.
Yeah, so if he survived the plane crash, it's arguable that his brother did, and so his brother could come back as the Weather Wizard.
That's true.
Which I am all behind. Like, I really, really want to see the Flash versus the Rogues. That would be amazing. But yeah, and also, technically they kind of have an out with Multiplex too, because that could be a clone.
True, I guess, yeah. But I would be more surprised if Multiplex comes back than hopefully Weather Wizard. Because, I mean, Multiplex isn't even like a Flash villain, is he? I thought he was more of a Firestorm villain.
He might be. I don't know the distinction. I honestly don't really know the Firestorm villains. But I mean, there are heavy rumors that this show is going to be grooming Firestorm into his own spin-off series, and so he could show back up again in that.
Oh, interesting. He hasn't shown up yet, has he?
No, because that's they mentioned him for the first time in this episode. Ronnie, Caitlin's fiance.
Oh, I didn't know that he was Firestorm.
Yeah, that's Ronnie Raymond. So he's
he's half a Firestorm.
Right, he is half a Firestorm. So the idea is that the particle accelerator, I don't know, just merged him with the scientist guy or whatever, and we haven't seen him show up yet. At least that's kind of the inference that comic book people have been making.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
He's being played by
Robbie Amell,
who is the brother of Stephen Amell, who's the star of Arrow, who also was formerly the star of another CW show. It makes sense that they would, have these tentative plans to spin him off into his own show.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that is going to be so cool about Flash moving forward, is that it seems like Flash is a lot more going to be about universe building in terms of character than Arrow was. I mean, Arrow obviously spawned the Flash, but I mean, Flash is. I've already heard. I mean, I'm drawing a blank now that I'm putting myself on the spot, but that there are going to be a lot of like superheroes who show up in Flash. I think. I mean, we have Firestorm, like you said, and Vibe is like a member of Team Flash already. He doesn't have powers, but
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. I think one of the things that makes Flash really strong in contrast with Arrow is it really embraces the world that it's in. You know, like with Arrow, just right from the name, you know that they're kind of rejecting it because the character's name is Green Arrow, but that's too silly sounding, so he's just Arrow. And then nobody with superpowers showed up until most of the way through season 2, or halfway through season 2, and yeah, like it's included a bunch of characters like Deadshot, Deathstroke, and people like that, Merlin, but it's all very much like the characters that you can interpret as being very grounded, like just they just fight kind of stuff. Flash is going like all in with, dude runs real fast, dude controls the weather, dude can make infinite clones of himself, guy turns into gas.
yeah, and like you said, they're gonna have Grodd at some point, giant, talking, super smart, genius gorilla.
Yes, and I am like worried and excited by that because I have no idea how it's gonna work. Because I don't think TV CGI is gonna be enough for a legitimately like full-on talking gorilla, which means they're gonna have to do something with like makeup or animatronics, which I think would be really cool. But that's a different thing. Yeah, like I think Flash just does what like Marvel's movies do. What makes them successful is it embraces all of that craziness,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it enjoyable.
And that's one of the weird things about Arrow and Flash being like in the same universe is Arrow feels very much like a DC production. Like there aren't a great ton of jokes. Everything's dark, like dark in tone and dark in, everything takes place at night. But Flash through 2 episodes feels like a Marvel movie. Like there's a lot of fun. There's jokes. There's like silly jokes. And yeah, I mean it feels a lot. It doesn't feel like something that DC is making.
Yeah, like lately the Warner Brothers trademark has been, I mean even DC in the comics has just been like grim and like everyone's angry and violent, and that's what Arrow is. Like Arrow is exactly that. And like you said, Flash is like very much not. Like the hero is a hero. Like he saves people. He doesn't kill anybody. Like we were talking about the villains dying through the first 2 episodes, which we also we addressed that they might not have officially killed off those characters forever, but he isn't the one who kills them. Like
Yeah.
I think that's a big distinction.
Yeah, pretty big point. I mean, Weather Wizard gets killed by Joe West, a cop, and Multiplex kills himself.
Yeah, he just jumps out a window and then forces Barry to drop him. And that's the thing, like Barry rushed over to save him after he already got out of the way and was like, free of responsibility for his actions. He went over there to try and save him.
Because that's what superheroes do.
I was really hoping. I think there's one missed opportunity, but I get it because it's functionally his second weakest Flash, so he might not have the confidence for it. But I was really hoping he was going to jump out the window and run super fast down the side of the building to catch him.
That would have been pretty awesome.
That would have been so awesome. That's another thing I'm really excited for them to do because so far he's just been running the ground real fast. So I think when he kind of really when the show starts letting Barry push the boundaries of what he can do, I think it's going to get really exciting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that feels like real about the show is like you said, he's only had these powers for essentially like a few weeks. So it makes sense in a show context for him not to be doing those things because he doesn't have like the self-confidence to try it, and he doesn't know how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think that's one way in which the TV format of like the episodic, multiple episode kind of deal is really going to be strong in terms of adapting these comic book characters because it lets them evolve in a kind of more of a chronologically plausible way, you know, as opposed to coming out of a 2.5 hour movie being fully formed, you know?
Yeah, because like movies kind of require jumps in time, like
Mm-hmm.
to explain why. I don't know. For example, I don't know. I'm shitty at coming up
Well, I
with
mean,
examples off the top of my head.
as an example, you see like Superman's powers evolve through Man of Steel, and if that required a montage, you know, let
Hmm.
us see him trying to fly, and then now he can fly, you know, like that. Basically, with movies, if you need to give us like a little seed, and then you can kind of leap further with that, then you know maybe you would be able to in real life, you know, or in kind of a longer format thing like a TV show. Like, because in a movie, you know, we watch it and we've seen up until this point Superman doesn't fly, like he can't fly, or he doesn't know he can fly, and then he's just jumping around, and then you know he feels a little burst, and so he's like, oh, I can do something with this, and so he jumps again and flies a little further, and then he jumps again and he's just flying now, and now he can do it, you know.
Hmm.
Whereas something like, you know, with Flash, with this show, they're letting it, they're letting him evolve in a way that feels very real, and not in the frustrating, like, dumbed down way that a lot of DC Warner Brothers properties have made their stuff feel quote unquote real.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we're pretty much at the 50-minute mark, so we're gonna cut it here. But Jack and I are planning on hopefully doing another podcast next week about the DC movies. Pretty much starting with Man of Steel, since that's the like beginning of this DC cinematic universe. But we're planning on talking about that and our personal feelings about about the DC movies lately, which
Yeah,
should
we'll,
be
we'll be
fun.
talking about that and the upcoming Batman vs. Superman, and then most likely we'll be covering the recently announced schedule of DC movies through 2020.
It should be fun. It'll probably be. I did. I mean, Jack didn't swear at all, and I swore once. I was trying to watch myself. It wasn't that hard this time, but next time it'll be very hard to not swear.
Yeah, we'll probably get into some swearing when we talk about Batman vs.
Yeah,
Superman.
I'll have to learn how to bleep things out next week. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'm Dominic Cioli, the associate editor for the Phoenix. This is on the Phoenix's website, so I don't really have to tease anything. You're already here. But I mean, this week we had a pretty good article about sexual assaults. I had a pretty good review of Gotham, if I do say so myself. But yeah, check around the website. We have some pretty good stuff this week. Jack, what about you?
I'm Jack Cioli. I am the artist on a independent comic called Atlas, which you can find at atlascomic.com, and we're also on Facebook and on facebook.com/atlascomic. And we've got 2 issues out, and the third one should be up by the end of the month.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for talking, and I'll probably talk to you immediately after we stop this podcast. All right. See you next week, guys. Bye.